Good morning, students. I hope all of you are doing very well and all of you are enjoying your online classes. So be happy, stay at home, and stay safe. So let's start our today's topic, that is blood. So blood is basically a kind of a fluid, and if we see its composition, so it is made up of plasma and different type of a cell such as RBCs, red blood cells, WBC, white blood cells, and platelets. And these plasma and these cells circulates in our body through a system, and that system is called as a vascular system. So this vascular system is also found in other vertebrates. If we talk about the function of a blood, so it supplies essential nutrients in the cell such as glucose, fatty acids, and amino acid. It transports oxygen and carbon dioxide and hormones in the body. So on the basis of these two facts, we can also say that the blood is work as a vehicle which transport the nutrients to the different parts of our body, as well as it transport oxygen and hormones in the different parts of our body. It protects from the pathogens, blood loss, and disease, as the blood has a different kinds of cells, and those different kinds of cell perform different kinds of a function, in which WBC, that means white blood cells, provide us protections from the different kinds of a pathogen. And the blood also helps to regulate our body temperature, and as our body temperature should be constant, so that constant body temperature is maintained with the help of the blood. Now we will talk about the physical characteristics of a blood. So blood is a salty in taste, and it is heavier than the water. And if you see the temperature of a blood, so it is a 38 degree Celsius. And blood constitutes about 8% of total body weight. That means whatever we have the weight, of that weight 8% blood will be present. And if we see the average blood volume in male, it is about 5 to 6 liter, and in case of female it is a 4 to 5 liters. And if we see the pH of a blood, it is a 7.4. And one more interesting fact you have to keep in your mind, that the pH of blood in artery is more than in veins, as everybody already know about the arteries and vein. So artery and vein, these are the blood vessels which carry the blood. In case of artery, the blood is pure, and in case of vein, the blood is impure. And if we talk about the blood which is flowing in artery, it will have a slightly more pH than the blood which is flowing in veins. Components of a blood. So blood is basically made up of two components. The first component is a blood cells, and second component is a plasma, which is a transparent fluid. And blood cells will be present 45% of total blood volume, and plasma will be 55% of total blood volume. Now we will see the different type of blood cells. So basically three types of blood cells are found in blood. The first one is red blood cells, second is white blood cells, and third one is platelets. Red blood cells is also called as erythrocytes, white blood cells is also called as a leukocyte, and platelets is also called as a thrombocytes. So these erythrocytes, leukocyte, thrombocytes are the alternative names of the different blood cells. Red blood cells. So this red blood cell is one of the cellular component of a blood, and it is also called as a erythrocyte. And if we see the shape of this red blood cell, so it is a biconcave in shape, and the cell membrane of RBCs or red blood cell, it is elastic. That means the cell membrane of red blood cell shows the elasticity. And as we know that all the cells have the nucleus, but this RBCs, red blood cells, doesn't have the nucleus. And 95% of the RBC consists of a hemoglobin, which is a red pigment. And because of having this hemoglobin or red pigment, the color of the blood is red. And the remaining 5% is having enzymes, salts, and other protein. So that means the major portions of RBC is acquired by the hemoglobin, and because of this hemoglobin the color of the blood is red. If we talk about the formation of red blood cells, so these red blood cells are formed in red bone marrow. So this red bone marrow is a kind of a tissue that is basically found in the flat bones of our body. And the examples of these flat bones are the ribs, sternum, vertebral columns, etc. And the average life of the red blood cell is 4 months or 120 days. That means after 120 days these red blood cells get destroyed. In our body, 2 to 10 million red blood cells are formed and destroyed in every seconds. So that means the process of formation and the process of destructions of these red blood cells take place very rapidly. In every seconds, about 2 to 10 million red blood cells are formed and get destroyed. And the main functions of RBC is transportations of oxygen and carbon dioxide. So RBC shows this property because of having the hemoglobin, because hemoglobin bind with the oxygen and this hemoglobin is present in RBC. So suppose if we remove the hemoglobin from the RBC, then RBC cannot bind the oxygen. So that means RBC shows the transportation property of oxygen and carbon dioxide because of having the hemoglobin. And as I told that these RBCs doesn't have the nucleus, so because of that RBC accommodate maximum amount of hemoglobin. And the blood of male contain 5 to 5.5 millions RBC per cubic millimeter, and on the other hand the blood of females contain 4 to 4.5 million RBC per cubic millimeter of blood. White blood cell. So it is a second type of the cell that is found in a blood. It is also called as a leukocyte. It is a colorless, it doesn't have any kind of a color, and if we compare its size with the RBC, so it is a larger than the RBC. And 1 cubic millimeter of blood contain 7,000 to 8,000 WBC. And we can also say that it is approximately 1% of total blood volume. And it is also found in a bone marrow just like the RBC. And if we see its lifespan, so it basically depends on the body need. So they have a lifespan of months or even years. But in a general terms, we just say that the lifespan of a WBC in a man is about 10 to 13 days. As I told earlier, the WBC is about 1% of total blood volume. That means whatever we have the blood volume, WBC is present 1% in that blood volume. Okay. Only 2% of total WBC population circulating in blood at a time. So whatever the percentage of WBC is present, only 2% of that WBC volume is circulate in blood, and remaining the 98% of that total WBC percentage is present in skin, lungs and spleen. Now the function of WBC. So these WBCs are the cells of immune systems which are involved in protecting our body against the infectious disease as well as the foreign invader. That means whenever our body get infected by any kind of infectious microorganisms or foreign invader, so in that conditions our body fight with those infectious microorganisms or foreign invader with the help of these WBC. And because of that, we call these WBC as the cells of immune system. So that means our immune system is made up of basically these WBC or white blood cells. So type of the WBC. So WBCs are classified on the basis of having granules in its cytoplasm. So the cells which will have a granules in their cytoplasm, those cells will be called as a granulocytes. And the examples of granulocyte cells are the neutrophil cells, eosinophil cells and basophil cells. So that means in these cells, the granules are present in their cytoplasm. So granules are basically secretory vesicles. And the second type of the WBC is a granulocyte. So that means in these cells, granules will be absent in their cytoplasm. And in the category of agranulocytes, basically monocyte cells and lymphocyte cells are present. So that means WBC will have a total 1 neutrophil, 2 eosinophils, 3rd basophil cells, and these cells are the type of the granulocytes. And the second category is agranulocytes, and the examples of agranulocytes are the monocytes and lymphocyte cells. Platelets. It is one of the cellular components of a blood, and it is also called as a thrombocyte. So these platelets are not a cell, these are the fragments of the large cells, and nucleus is also absent in platelet just like the RBCs. And if we talk about its shape, so it's a random in shape and its size is 2 to 4 micron. And if we count the total number of platelets, so in one drop of a blood approximately 1,50,000 to 4 lakh platelets are present. The lifespan of platelets is about 5 to 9 days. And these platelets are also formed in bone marrow just like the other cellular components of the blood. Now the function of a platelets. So when a blood vessel is ruptured, the blood loss is prevented by a mechanism that is called as a blood clotting or blood coagulations. So through this blood clotting or blood coagulations, we can prevent the blood loss. So this prevention of blood loss is possible because of having the platelets. So in this way, platelets prevents loss of a large amount of blood. So suppose if the platelets count decrease in a blood, or if the platelets will be absent, then the clotting of blood or blood coagulations cannot take place. In that way, the blood loss will be continue, and a large amount of blood will be lost from our body. As in my previous slide, I explained that blood is composed of a transparent fluid which is called as a plasma, in which blood cells are suspended. So we have discussed about the blood cells. Now we will talk about the plasma. So plasma constitute about 55% of a blood volume, and it is the liquid portions of the blood. And if we see the composition of the plasma, so plasma basically contain 90% water, and the remaining 10% is plasma proteins, inorganic salts, nutrient materials, organic waste materials, and different regulatory substances. So these are the present in the plasma. Plasma is basically a water in which protein, salt, nutrient, and waste are dissolved. Plasma can be divided into 6 components. So these components are inorganic ions, plasma proteins, organic nutrients, nitrogenous waste, hormones, and gases. So that means besides having the water, these components are also present in plasma in very traces amount, because the maximum amount of the plasma is water. Now the function of plasma. So plasma helps to maintain blood pressure, and it also regulates our body temperature. As it contains minerals, salts, hormones, protein, so these components of plasma perform a very important functions in our body, as our body requires minerals, salts to do some kinds of very important biological function. So these mineral and salts are provided by the plasma. And hormones is also very important. So hormones is also a component of plasma. In this way, plasma performs a very important functions in our body. So that's all for today's class. Thank you.